We're done.
I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:31. And we'll begin with a hearing session. Mr. Favela, do we have?
I don't think we have.
No. Session.
Okay, so then we will adjourn into closed session. 6:15. And we will begin with, let's see, the flag salute. Am I correct? And Mrs. Mundine, would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
Absolutely. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and now we will go to approval of the minutes of February 1st, regular meeting.
I found one spelling thing that we just need to
Okay.
fix. Page 3, third paragraph, last sentence. It's the remaining. We just need to fix that
Excellent.
tiny little thing. Otherwise, everything was great.
Is there a first or a
I'll make that motion.
second?
1 second.
Okay. So we have a first and a second to approve the minutes of the February 1st meeting. Mrs. Lopez?
Aye. Sorry.
Mrs. Armstrong,
Aye.
Mr. Favela?
Aye.
Mrs. Rivas?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And now we move on to community relations. We'll begin with the hearing session. Mr. Favela, do we have any speakers?
Sure, we do. We have quite a few. So first up is Tara Arwood. Subject of comment, follow-up on letter written to the board. Live.
I think she's live. You wanna-
Okay. Can you hear us? You're allowed to speak now if you can. Again?
You're just asking her to unmute her.
Can you guys hear me?
Mrs. Anwood, I believe I'm going to have you wait a second. It's a little hard to hear you. Okay, go ahead now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I wrote a letter to the board. I hope that all of you got it and got the opportunity to read it. Sorry for some typos. It was midnight last night. I'm addressing the board today in regards to my daughter Elizabeth and just some of the stuff that I've had to deal with in getting her the correct care of why she is attending school. Back on October 5th, I submitted a letter from her palliative care doctor stating that he cares for her. She's a 9-year-old child with Leigh syndrome, cerebral palsy, developmental delay. She requires 24-hour care for all of her activities and daily needs. She needs a 2-person assist. She has dystonia and requires 1-to-1 supervision to prevent injury. Because of all of her medical needs, she requires the care of an LVN to be able to meet her needs within 5 minutes. This includes, but not limited to, monitoring for choking, assisting with toileting, providing breathing treatments, replacing G tubes, attending to leaky tubes, and repositioning of the limbs, as well as assessment for respiratory distress. I also provided a letter from her mitochondrial doctor, which states that she has mitochondrial complexity of the deficiency of the respiratory chain. This is a genetic disease called Leigh syndrome. She suffers from major disability with severe dystonia and brain lesions. She is very medically fragile and she is at great risk for metabolic decompensation and further brain damage, which may event in a life-threatening conclusion. Infections, in particular viral infections, are common in children with Leigh's. He also offered in that note that it would be very helpful if she had a 1-to-1 LVN level nurse available to provide her medicine and her care as needed. I've gotten nowhere with the district. I've tried over and over. I've asked for IEEs. They want to do testing, but they don't want to come up with a comprehensive plan of less than 15 adults needing to be within 6 feet of her to do this assessment. They keep going back to taxpayer funds and that the taxpayers pay for these things, IEs, these certain services that she needs to be provided so that she can access her education. I've been working with children with disabilities since I was 14 years old. I still work with children with disabilities in a school setting. I watched Lizzie. I was home for 6 months when she was on distant learning. I know her present levels. We have kids like this that are mainstream that might not need all these medical needs, but cognitively, she's where she's supposed to be. I've been threatened by the district on home hospital. I've been told we'll switch schools because if she needs an LVN on the bus, that
I'm sorry, 3 minutes has concluded. Actually, yeah.
Almost up with her.
Sure. Well,
Okay, we'll go on to the next, and please keep in mind you have 3 minutes for your comments, and we'll go on to the next person who would like to make comments.
number 2, second up is Elena Leticia Maldonado Stamos, subject of comment concern for board. Can go ahead and see if we can hear you.
Can you hear us? Leticia, I don't see her name up there. Do you want to come back? Should we move on?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
You're on.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, I was being instructed while you guys were talking about the star 6. Okay, are we ready?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, please.
Okay. Good evening, board members. I'm here to speak on the matter that was made public by Will Fritz of the Voice of San Diego with an article published on March 2nd. I'm reading a statement signed by members of our community. There are several points in that article that concern many of us, but we're focusing on one, that Mr. Shinoff should not be the lawyer for our district. As active members of this community, we have experienced firsthand Mr. Shinoff's disingenuousness. You all know the work that we were involved in mapping the new election districts. Very early on, we realized that it was not going to be the collaborative and transparent process that we had hoped for. We can only surmise that Mr. Shinoff was not properly advising the board and the superintendent. We faced pushback at every turn with Mr. Shinoff, front and center, telling us that the methods he was employing for drawing the districts were well, good, and legal. Even when it was becoming evident that we community members were on the right path, Mr. Shinoff misrepresented the facts to the public by making statements about the fairness of his methods and stated in a public meeting that there was equal support for both the community developed map and the map that the board approved. That simply was not true by any recorded evidence. We don't believe that Mr. Shinoff was working in the best interest of this community. And now it appears as if he is actively involved in trying to block the will of the community by preventing our board members from fulfilling the duties with which we have tasked you to govern this district. That is to set policy and regulations, maintain safe and fully accredited schools, appoint and supervise a superintendent, to name a few. And this is happening just 60 days into the new terms. What kind of advice can you count on from him? Rather than being an impartial legal advisor, it appears that he is taking sides against the very board and the only body as a whole he is supposed to be accountable to. And as Mr. Fritz pointed out, this isn't news. Our question is, why is he still this district's lawyer? Who evaluated him? The former board? Very well, but now we basically have a new board and he is accountable only to you, and you are accountable only to us, the voters. Mr. Fritz noted that, quote, the complaint filed against Lieber and the dispute over hiring outside counsel appears to mark a continuation and certainly an escalation of the previous scuffles, end quote. Our next question is, why is that even happening if we now have a new board? Are these scuffles with Mr. Shinoff? If so, then he is the wrong lawyer to be advising the board. A board has the right to representation of their choice. Are the scuffles with the superintendent? Again, then he is the wrong lawyer for this board. In closing, I would like to point out that Mr. Fritz referred to board member Lieber as the de facto leader of the board. On that point, he is mistaken. Ms. Lieber is in fact a duly elected board president who has worked tirelessly and diligently as a board member for over 2 years, maintaining her integrity.
Sorry, Leticia, your time expired.
Yeah, thank you very much, both of you. Thank you very much, both of you, for taking the time to write and call in to give us your opinions. We, I believe, have a couple more.
And Leticia signed up again for
Okay.
another comment, so she.
Okay, Leticia,
Another 3.
So she'll just have to hit star 6 once again to unmute herself.
And
okay,
you'll need to hit star 6 again to unmute yourself.
Yes.
You have
Okay.
another 3 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm sorry I ran over my time on the other one. So my next point has to do with the children being back in school and it being pretty common knowledge that a lot of the children are going to be, excuse me, I have a cough, are going to be behind. They're going to be worried. They're going to be concerned. And I just wanted to point out that there are lots of us community members that are available to help tutor, be it by Zoom or socially distanced, whatever it's going to take. I think that there's a lot of resources that are not being tapped to serve these children so that we can do as much as we can to help them make up for lost time. I'm excited about working with a couple of kids personally through just contacting their parents. But I think that, again, there's ways that we can involve the community and these folks that are, excuse me, about our young people. And I look forward to the opportunity to try to help as a tutor, either through the library or through the school or other informal settings. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Catherine Evans.
Mrs. Evans, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, could you turn it up just a tiny bit? Okay, you can go ahead now.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kathy Evans. I have been William H. Fraser's healthcare specialist since August 1st, 2014. Please make my letter to the board and all attachments available for the public to copy or read at the district office. On February 26, 2021, the district informed me that I am being involuntarily transferred effective Monday, March 8th, 2021, in accordance with the contract between FUESD and CSEA. This contract specifically states that no employee shall be involuntarily transferred arbitrarily or capriciously. I believe that my involuntary transfer is arbitrary, capricious, and a violation of the contract. I, with the help of my union, intend to grieve my involuntary transfer. The district's action of the involuntary transfer is based on retaliation, which includes several reasons. First reason, I reported FUESD to the California Department of Public Health, Shots for School, and the San Diego County Immunization Program in August for failure to comply with California's immunization law. I was asked by my district nurse, Pam Weichert, to break the law by allowing students to begin school without the required immunizations. And FUESD allowed these students to attend school knowing that they registered without the required immunizations. I immediately reported this directive to break the law to my supervisor, Erica Rainey, principal at William H. Fraser School. Rainey did not support me, but instead instructed me to follow the directive that was given to me. On Friday, August 21st, I was notified by Bill Billingsley and Erica Rainey that they needed to talk to me and I should phone my union. My conference summary memo from Principal Rainey states that I am expected to follow all directives given to me from site admin and district office personnel, and failure to comply with the above directions will result of a written warning placed in my personnel file. The second reason, I went on a COVID-related leave and used the Family First Coronavirus Act due to my doctor's note at William H. Fraser not complying with the CDC and CDPH guidelines. I have observed Principal Rainey not wearing her mask. I have observed an indoor exercise class at the school with admin not wearing a mask and staff wearing masks below their nose. My isolation room was taken away and I was not supplied with my required PPEs. which I requested along with my union in keeping myself, staff, students, and the community safe from COVID-19.
Mrs. Evans, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind not mentioning any employees' names?
Okay,
Thank
okay.
you.
During my leave, I was in constant communication with HR about my updates on returning and when I would receive my COVID vaccine, which was Monday, February 22nd. I received an email from HR stating that I was put on paid admin leave with no reason. On Monday, February 22nd, I had a virtual meeting with HR and my labor relations. I was informed that I was being transferred involuntarily due to student needs. My labor relations asked whether student had changed while I was out on leave. They said district was still in the process of assessing.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Evans.
The time has expired.
Okay, next to comment is Jennifer Jeffries. Subject to comment, community collaboration.
Mrs. Jeffries?
Yes, good
Oh,
evening.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening to you. I want to start off by thanking Mr. Gonzalez, Dr. Gonzalez, Principal of Maylis, and Miss Urena, School Counselor, for arranging for me to be a community reader this morning. March 8th, I was in 3 classes, Mrs. Dupre's, Mr. Carolampio, and Miss Armenta. They were fantastic audiences, and the kids were just so ready to be at school with each other. It was delightful. I want to do my hat as a board of director member of the Fallbrook Regional Health District and talk to you as board member colleagues here. I want to shine a light on the collaborative testing and vaccination effort. From the beginning of COVID, Fallbrook Union Elementary School District and the Health District designed and launched a collaborative effort for COVID testing with great success. As we move into wider vaccination availability, that collaboration is expanding to include Champions for Health, who are a community grant partner for the Fallbrook Regional Health District, Voices of Fallbrook, and in time, the Vista Clinic. To illustrate the power of community collaboration, Champions for Health, the district, and Voices of Fallbrook are launching a vaccine outreach initiative for our families in Duluth, using the Duluth Schoolhouse as the delivery site. I lived within strolling distance of the Duluth Schoolhouse for 6 years when I was superintendent, and I know how perfect that site is. The Health District is so pleased to hear about this collaboration. Hats off to Mr. Favela and Dr. Singh for being proactive in selecting a space in a timely and responsive manner in anticipation of vaccine availability. Those in the Valley are a highly vulnerable population in our region, and this effort goes a long way towards equity and goodwill towards all. Next, the Fallbrook Regional Health District is in the planning phase of a community health and wellness center on our 5-acre property on East Mission. Several Zoom focus meetings are being held this week. And on behalf of the Health District, I want to thank all of the local school districts for their assistance in helping to get the word out. In addition to the natural flow of parent-to-parent communication, Dr. Singh gave the go to reach out to parents of the district serving on DLAC and ELAC councils, assuring that parents and guardians of students learning English will be included in this effort. It's truly appreciated, and the Health District thanks you for those collaborations.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffries.
Thank you. And hold on, because she has another 3 minutes. She's the next to comment. Regarding item 7, 4-day extended school year.
Yes. Thank you so much. I wanted to encourage and to praise the district for the reopening that is occurring. Let's remember that Fallbrook Union Elementary School students returned to the classroom on October 5th, much quicker than many other districts. Starting today, students in K-6 are back in the classroom 5 days a week. This accounts for 90% of the 4,500 students in this district. On April 5th, the 7th and 8th grade hybrid schedule will move to a longer day. And boy, do I know families who are happy to hear that, including my neighbors. Your schools have now had in-person education for 79 of the 179 school days. 4 districts with 1,000 or more students are on the San Diego County Office of Ed COVID dashboard, indicating they have in-person instruction going on. 11 districts in this county with over 1,000 students. 11 of them have a big 0 in the column for in-person instruction. In the last 5 months, I have met regularly with 20 superintendents from 20 districts. The challenges of getting students back in classrooms have been formidable and in most cases insurmountable. They are now hoping against hope to get the waiver approved for in-person instruction by March 31st. And here is Fallbrook Union Elementary School District on March 19th, welcoming community members to Zoom into classrooms filled with eager learners, welcoming teachers, and at the ready support staff. Leadership is in the proof of the pudding, and this is a pretty darn good pudding. How proud the board must be of the teachers, classified staff, district office, personnel, and executive level leaders, principals, directors, assistant supes, and the superintendent, all of whom have worked wholeheartedly to make this core work of the district happen. The district is truly unique in just a delightful way in these complicated and challenging times. And I extend my kudos to the board as well. It takes a team from board to staff. And this is just a resounding success for this district. And congratulations to everybody. And the kids are the winners on this one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffries, kids and parents.
All right, thank you so much. And that is it for comments. And thank you to the 115 participants in our meeting today.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we will move on from the hearing sessions to reports from the board. Mrs. Lopez?
Yes, since we last met, attended the ELD recertification program, which was awesome. I really thought the kids did a great job and going from classroom to classroom. And I love the book they put together. I thought that was a very special thing. I also had a lunch with the superintendent and was really impressed with the whole team, the administrative team, and how they're planning for the next few years, how they have focused and directed all the schools through the COVID issues and getting the kids back in the classroom. But now, not just sitting on that, now moving forward to the next, what's going to happen next year and what's going to happen the year after that. So I do want to congratulate the superintendent and your team. I think you guys are doing a spectacular job for planning for that. Unfortunately, also in this last month, I attended the funeral for Rich Alderson, who was a principal here in Fallbrook for a long time. There were quite a few people in attendance virtually for that, but it was a very nice presentation. And for those of us who knew him and worked with him, both on a professional and personal level, it really was lovely. So that was unfortunate, but I'm glad I was able to participate in it. And as of last Saturday, I was able to hold my new grandson. I am a proud grandma of a 12-year-old grandbaby. So
12-day-old.
12-day-old. 12-day-old. Boy, they grow up fast, don't they?
Yeah, right.
That's it.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Lundin?
Well, I know we have a packed agenda today, so I'll keep my comments super brief. I just want to acknowledge what a great day it is today, that our students in K through 6 are back at school. It's a really important day for our students and their parents. And I want to also, I know my colleagues feel the same way, say how grateful we are to our teachers, our classified staff, our administration, for their commitment and really hard work to make all this happen. So kudos, great that they're back. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Fadella.
Sure. Yeah, quite a lot has happened. It's amazing to see all the work that happens month to month. A few things that stood out for me this past month was learning about the language support that the district provides for families. I was able to learn about more about our families that speak other languages besides English or Spanish in the home. While there's quite a few out there, there's the district has done what it can to provide support to these parents. Definitely interested in learning more about that and celebrating the diversity that exists in our school district. Also, I'm glad to hear that there's progress being made, as Mrs. Jeffries mentioned, as to provide the Duluth school site as a resource to provide vaccines, flu vaccines, COVID vaccines. Really glad to see that moving forward. And also the efforts to get bulk meals out to more families, including in the Duluth as well. So I'm really glad to see that we're approaching everything in equity lens and getting what needs to be what needs to be delivered to the folks that need it most. And also want to acknowledge that it's been quite a rough month as well for our district. You want to send my condolences to the family of Mike Nichols, Cindy Martin, and also wanted to mention, a dear friend of mine, Ulises Flores and the Flores family, pillars here in the community. Wanted to send my condolences as well. Ulises Flores grew up in the Fallbrook community, became a teacher, very inspired to, from a social justice lens to be a teacher. He was working in the Lake Elsinore district, and unfortunately his was caught the COVID illness and wasn't able to recover. So it's been, I know quite a few folks in our community are mourning this loss, and just wanted to make sure that, let them know that we were mourning with you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Rivas?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I am one of the parents who was very much looking forward to today, and my son going back to school 5 days, and want to reiterate the thanks to our teachers, our staff, for really entrusting us with our COVID plan, and helping us to implement the plan really at every level of our district family, our parents and everybody working together. And we wouldn't be here if it weren't for all of us working together. We have been celebrating Read Across America the last week or so, and it is the highlight of my year. I love being able to come into the classroom and read to the kids. And of course, it was all virtual this year, but I did get to read to students at a couple of our schools. So that was a real pleasure. I would like to point out that March is Arts Education Month. So I'll be doing some art with my son's PTA, and I'm really looking forward to when we can get volunteers and our contractors back into the classroom to do more hands-on arts with the kids. And I would like to mention that the Boys and Girls Club of North County is having its major annual fundraiser starting April 4th. They have an online auction, and then through April 10th, they're doing Wedges, Wine, and Whiskey, which sounds like a lot of fun. And it's their one major fundraiser, and they've just been amazing partners for many years, but especially in this last year. So I hope the community will support them. And lastly, CSBA's Legislative Action Week is next week. And they've done this for years in person, where you would have to go travel to Sacramento to be a part of that. And now it's going to be virtual. So I just wanted to encourage my fellow board members to participate in that, because it gives us the opportunity to advocate at the state level for our students, which I think is more important now than ever. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I will make my report really short as well. I attended the planning board meeting. There is initiative coming through that I think affects our students in our community on cannabis. And so I have written, not as the president of the board, but just my concerns that it be well thought out and not be in traveling paths with our students. If they do locate any facilities in our district, in our community, which is our district. I also attended the Palomar Ad Hoc Committee, which is working on some additional buildings for the Palomar campus. And I too pass my condolences along to Cindy Martin. I'm so sorry she lost her mother. And thank you to the teachers and staff for, you guys rock, that you have pulled this off. And everyone in the district, it's amazing. And I also want to point out that we have a softball coach with us. We have Mr. Favela, who arm was twisted quite steadily behind his back virtually, and he is now coaching his daughter's softball team, and that's the end of my report. And I would now like to turn it over to our superintendent for her report.
You bet. Thank you, Mrs. Lieber. Let me turn on my camera. Thank you, Mrs. Lieber. I want to just, reiterate, we so appreciate the comments and the thank yous to our staff for all of our students coming back to school today. And I want to tie it to, as you've recognized, the work that's been done by all of our staff, but also our parents and our community. Our parents have been such an instrumental partner with us in when children were not feeling well, staying at home, picking kids up when, maybe had a runny nose or a headache. Our parents have been so supportive and locked arm in arm with us, and which is what we kind of talked about when this whole thing started, if you remember in the beginning, that it was really going to take a community of us to try to really manage this. I am so proud to tell you that in our district for 5 days in a row, we have had 0 employees and 0 children with active COVID cases for the last 5 days. It really, I think, is so important and speaks to the effort our community has made, all of us together, to allow us to open our schools. So from our employees and our teachers and our classified staff, but our parents and our community members, we appreciate it. We appreciate it so much. I spoke with almost every principal today, and the best, lots of different awesome phrases about how everything went at school today. But one of them said everyone was walking on a cloud, that the kids were so happy, and our administrators and families. I think it's kind of like after summer break when you send your kids back to school. I think our parents, we know how important it is for our children to be at school for all the reasons we've been talking about for all this time. So our community has really a lot to be proud of. We're going to keep working with our middle school kids. As you know, they are on a hybrid schedule. Just as a reminder to you about that, at Potter, it's with the physical distancing requirement. We can't get to the requirement for the distance for our middle school kids, but we continue to bring back adding smaller groups of kids. So right now we have about 170 students at Potter who are our most at-risk kids, or students who really need that extra support, whether they're children who have an IEP, young people who have an IEP, or children who might be English learners or really not doing well at all in the hybrid environment. And Dr. Powers has been working with her staff to keep adding students back at Potter, so that we continue to really focus on, getting as many kids back while we're maintaining all of the public health guidelines. So we will continue to be doing that. I just want to thank, there's so many people in our community who've read for Read Across America. And so thank you so much if you had the opportunity to do that. I was invited to Mary Fay Pendleton this year and got to read to all the kindergartners outside with masks on, all little kindergartners all spread out at Mary Fay, and just what a joyful time it is to get to have those experiences with our kids. I want to congratulate, today it was announced, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Billingsley on announcing his retirement from our school district after 17 years of serving as a teacher and a principal, a director, and as our associate superintendent. And so he'll be with us all the way till the end of the year, and during the course of time that we'll be working to replace him. But and we'll do more to honor Mr. Billingsley, but I wanted to acknowledge that he did announce that today, and we're very, very happy for him. And then lastly, as some of you mentioned, this is the first board meeting that we've had since our very, very dear friend and colleague, Michael Nichols, has passed away. And I wanted to just take a minute to, as we all have during the course of the last several weeks, to acknowledge how saddened and heartbroken we have all been about that. and that we continue to send our prayers to Michael's family, his brother Matthew, as you know, who still works in our school district. We are providing as much support as we possibly can to Michael's family. But I know the board joins me in our heartfelt condolences. But I think it's as important that we have just take an opportunity to continue to send our best wishes and prayers to his family, as well as to the other folks that you have mentioned tonight in your comments. And we appreciate your care and your thoughtfulness about that. So thank you, Mrs. Lieber. That's all I have.
Thank you very
You bet.
much.
You bet.
Okay, so now we'll be going to presentations. Yay.
Finally.
We are so lucky to have Live Oak Elementary School here with us, and I hope you'll each introduce yourselves and that you are on screen. Yes.
Right. So good evening, Dr. Singh, Cabinet, and Governing Board members. My name is Patty Parson, and I am the principal of Live Oak Elementary School. And this is my amazing team, my assistant principal, Miss Erin Gates back here, and Miss Ira Latham, our school counselor. Thank you for inviting us here tonight to speak to you about our wonderful counseling program at Live Oak. As you know, the counseling program is an integral part of our support system at Live Oak, as well as all our schools in FUESD. Our fabulous school counselor, Mrs. Latham, is an essential member of our team, working with students individually and collectively to create a school climate and culture that leads to healthy learning, living, and personal growth. Mrs. Latham conducts classroom lessons, small group sessions, restorative circles. She helps organize school-wide activities, parent community outreach. She does staff professional development. She helps us with our attendance and so much more. And without further ado, Mrs. Latham.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'd like to start off with restorative circles. If you've been in our district for a while, you've heard of these before, but we've been doing them for years. And it definitely paid off this last year when the kids had so much transition. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So at the beginning of the year and even at the end of last school year, we created virtual circles. And so we were able to address concerns and feelings about returning to school. And so even now the kids we continue to have circles, and using these circles, I think, was one of the ways that students were able to stay connected with each other, with their teachers. And in a little bit, I'm going to show you how our data reflects that. Next slide. This is probably my favorite aspect of my job, classroom lessons. I love going into classroom lessons. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. Here are some of the topics that I've covered this year and previous years. And these lessons are based on our data, either from our CHIC survey or now our panorama. So it kind of looks different every year. We try to meet kids where they are, and you can kind of see what was going on throughout the year if you read the topics in order. But I'd like to show you a little video of one of our students or one of our classes. In the next slide, please. So I love getting videos like this. I didn't ask them for it. The teacher just sent it to me, and she said the kids have been using this phrase every day when they start doing something hard. They remind each other, the hand motions, they talk about grit. So I love getting videos like this. They've been talking about, using their bubblegum brain. It's for growth mindset, but we call it bubblegum brain. So it's been encouraging to get these videos. Next slide, please. So one thing I like to do when I do classroom lessons is I like getting feedback from the kids. So a lot of times I'll do pre and post tests or open-ended surveys, things like that. But these are some of the things that they have been saying about our last couple of lessons. So one thing that I learned today is that trying new things will help your brain expand and to think positive. I learned that making mistakes is normal. That's so important for them to know. I learned that don't give up and don't be a brick brain. So that's what we call a fixed mindset. That's what we call it, a brick brain, or that sometimes you need to have a bubble gum brain. So I love that they are taking it in. So I love getting this feedback because it helps me kind of gauge if they're understanding the lessons, but also it helps me to know if I need to change anything. So it helps me evaluate my lessons basically. Now I'd like to show you some data. This is happy data for me. So based on the CHIC survey in regards to caring adult relationships in the year 2017, 2018, 53% of our students said they had caring adult relationships. In the following year, 2018, 2019, it went up to 65%. But the best one yet was this last fall, actually, when the kids were still learning at home, and this is based on our panorama data. The one on the top, that's for the lower grades, and it was 83% of the students believe they had supportive relationships on campus. And then the bottom one, which really surprised me, was 6th grade. So they said 85% of them said they had supportive relationships. So that made us very, very happy. We had significant growth. And I'd like to actually show you a video of one of our 6th graders and her journey at Live Oak, and she kind of talks about this data.
Thank you.
Lovely. So I showed you our areas of strength, but we also have areas of growth. So based on our panorama data, these are 2 highest or areas of need. So growth mindset and grit. So I've started lessons. I started immediately. I've also been meeting with different PLC groups at the grade level meetings to kind of address that data with the teachers specifically. And I know my administrators and I are already planning for next year, additional training, professional development for the teachers to kind of address this during those first days when we come back and we do those trainings. So that's how we're dealing to address these needs. And I'll leave it to Ms. Gates now.
So having this data has given us a well-rounded view of our students and their needs. Zaira has been able to introduce our students to Kelso's Choice, which has given our staff and students a common language. So you can often hear, is this a big problem or a small problem, to kind of help the kids gain their perspective on the event that's taking place. Zaira has also been a member of our Positive Behavioral Intervention and Support Team, so our PBIS team. She ran our monthly data for trending behaviors and locations, so we were able to target the site needs. The PBS team led our campus through a transformation in student behavior and accountability. This was the team that promoted restorative circles with students while we were in-person learning years past. And Zyra was able to help us reformat these interventions. And on the slide, you can see kind of her take on what that restorative circle looked like virtually, kind of led teachers through that so they could experience it and then be able to lead their students through it as well. And our counseling program extends beyond the classroom. It's not just for kids. Earlier this year, Mrs. Parson and I noticed that our staff was really needing their own social and emotional supports because they were giving everything that they possibly could to students, and they needed to fill their bucket up as well. So we reached out to Zyra. She created some weekly videos, and they were called Survival Tips from Your Counselor. And there's a picture of one of the little episodes on there as well. They featured different staff members in the videos and covered a variety of topics such as what to do when you're stressed, who is your support group and why is that important? She has a holiday edition, which I'll show you. As well as having a grateful brain where staff members shared who and what they were grateful for and to build morale on campus. So I'll show you just a little clip on here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Survival Tips with Your Counselor Holiday Edition. Just want to share 3 tips for having a stress-free or a less stressful holiday season.
I personally look forward to every single one of them that came out because they were so amusing, and we just absolutely love Zyra, and she just seems to just tap in perfectly to what staff needs are. Our campus is truly a more cohesive place with a strong culture, and that is due in large part to our counseling program.
So another area that I support with are school-wide activities. If you want to go to the next slide, please. Now, these school-wide activities are not just for fun. Well, they are, but we try to connect them to a greater purpose, which is to establish a more positive climate and culture in our schools and ensure that students are connecting and building relationships. If you want to go to the next slide, there's more pictures. Thank you. So I would say most, if not all of our activities are connected to lessons that the kids are already receiving in the classroom. So these activities are a way for us to reinforce what's already been taught in the classroom. And the last thing I'd like to talk about, which I think is one of the most important things I try to do, is community partnerships. I am one person. I can't physically address every single need for every student, although I wish I could. So if I can't provide a service directly, I really try to do my best to find something that matches whatever that need is. So if you want to go to the next slide, I work very closely with our mental health agencies here in town. Sometimes I have to work with the PERT team, Rady's Hospital, just all sorts of agencies. Sometimes I refer families to the food bank, rental assistance programs. I work closely with Carly. She's part of the Focus program, and they're an awesome resource for military families. And in about 2 weeks, actually, we are hosting a career week, which some of you are going to be attending. Reminder. But I love being able to do this because I know the kids will get to know who's who in their community, and hopefully start thinking about one day themselves like giving back to their community.
So the support that our school counselor, Mrs. Latham, provides for our parents is just as important as the support she gives to our students. Mrs. Latham provides education to our parents through her chat with the counselor events, videos in our newsletters, and telephone conferences. She also provides parents with extra support and resources as needed, whether it's within the school system or within our community. Here is Mrs. Mowry, one of our parents, to share with you her thoughts on our counseling program and the culture and climate at Live Oak.
Hi, my name is Alexia Mallory, and I'm the parent of a 3rd grade student and a kindergartner at Live Oak Elementary. I'm currently the acting PTA president, and professionally, I am the national director of sales for Discovery Behavioral Health, a nationwide provider of mental health services for adults and adolescents. I want to take a moment and extend my appreciation and gratitude towards the staff at Live Oak Elementary and the greater school district. The communication this year has been incredible. I feel like we've been able to transition seamlessly between in-person and distance learning and everything in between. The calls and text messages and emails have allowed us to ensure that we are all on the same page and making sure we're getting our students where they need to be in a timely manner. I also want to comment to the staff at Live Oak on their ability to establish really good rapport with the students as well as the parents throughout this year. They've been available for questions, available for support and insight, sending out reminders in terms of what we need to be doing and when we need to be doing it. And also just the warm feeling that you feel when you're on campus. Each day, the kids are greeted by a number of different staff, including Mrs. Carson, Mrs. Bates, Mrs. Hunter, and several others. The kids all are so excited when they see them going through those gates. And I have to tell you, my two are particularly interested in giving them all the information that's occurred in the last 12 hours since they've been at school. And last, I want to comment on the counseling services that have been supporting the kids this year through Mrs. Latham's Zoom meetings, the updates that you're sending out. It is so incredibly important to make those available and continue to make those available, as the pandemic is something that I see professionally really exacerbate the needs for mental health services year over year. At my organization alone, the demand has increased up to 80% for the adolescents in particular, who are needing more structured support to better manage what's going on and how they're feeling. So thank you all so much. We appreciate everything that you're doing.
So thank you again for inviting us here tonight. As you can see from our presentation, Zyra and all our FUESD school counselors do so much for our students, our staff, and our school community. And we are so grateful to be in a district that values school counselors and the essential support that they provide to our students. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board? Thank you. It's a great presentation. I have one quick question. Have you ever done meditation? I read somewhere, and I have a girlfriend whose daughter is in Sacramento, and she goes around and does some meditation practices in the classroom, and they say it really reduces a lot of the issues.
We have a little book. It's called Breathe Like a Bear. So I think that's what you're referring to. It brings it down to their level, and it does calm them down. And I used it a lot when we were virtual because it uses a lot of hand motions and examples with like bears and trees. And so, yeah, we've used some of it. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah,
That's great.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks all three of you for coming tonight and coming in person.
Thank you for letting us come in person.
It's so nice to see people.
Now we'll let other people back in the room,
Yes.
because you got to come in the room. Thank you, ladies, so much.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, should we let everybody back in the room?
We
Mrs.
just
Lopez, do you
pause for
wanna-
just a minute and we'll let our staff back in the room.
Knock on the door.
You might have their computer on, so they would know maybe.
That was great.
So I'm going to go ahead and go on to board operations. We have an action item. CSBA has a delegate assembly election, and we have 7 seats that we'll be voting on, and we have 8 candidates. And I believe all of you had a chance to read their resumes and the reason why we should be voting for them. And so first, I'd like to open this up to discussion. Do we have anybody that has any comments before we give our votes?
The only one I feel particularly, I mean, they all seem like, they're all school board members. We know they're there to serve students. So I'm sure they'd all do a great job. The only one I feel particularly strongly about is Melissa Crow is from Warner USD. And I think it's important to have smaller school districts represented. I don't know what the proportion is, but I think that also having somebody from North County is very helpful to remind people that we exist up here. As they forget in San Diego. So that's one I would definitely want to see her on the list.
Thank you. We really maybe should just vote the one we don't want, right?
It's tough.
7 positions.
There's 7 positions and 8 candidates, so. My only comment is that 3 of the candidates are from one school district. And even though I believe it's a fairly large school district, my feeling is we might have better representation if we only, if we had a few other districts. And in fact, I would hope that maybe next year, someone from North County closer to our area would run for the same reason that Mrs. Leva said. I think we have a different issues when we're in different areas, and that would be my recommendation, that we not limit it to, not have 3 from one district. I'm not sure how to choose which of the 2 of these 3, but they all seem qualified.
I had that same observation, that probably if we went out the 3 down to 2, that would provide the fairest representation for each of the other schools. Problem is, they're all so impressive.
I like, I don't know if she goes with Kate Bishop, just because we've been talking about diversity and equity and some of those things, and that's part of what she talked about in her paragraph about herself, that's one of the passions she has for that. You know, working through some of the anti-racist sort of things that some schools are going through. So, and she served on a couple other, in a couple other organizations in Chula Vista that might bring some good background to that as well.
Excellent. So any other comments on this?
Oh, well, if we're just looking at the 3 from Chula Vista, the second one, Leslie Bunker, has been on the board for 6 years. She's a incumbent, and it looks like she has a lot of great experience working with ACs and legislative action days. So I think, you know, it'd be valuable to continue to benefit from her experience. So maybe take the one new person that you mentioned, and then her as the incumbent.
Okay. Excellent suggestions. Any
Sounds
more
good.
comments? Okay, I think then what we'll do is, are we all in agreement that the others, that we're kind of narrowing this down to voting on the 3 Chula Vista ones? Since we all agree that the other ones are qualified, you in agreement?
Yes.
So let's take a vote on Mrs. Bishop. How many would want her to be our delegate? Let's just do a hand raise. Good. And how about Leslie Bunker? Okay. And then we have Lucy Grott. Okay, so I believe we've narrowed it down. Thank you very much. We will we'll sign this document and turn it in with our vote. I have a motion. Thank you so much. So there is, can you tell me how to do this, Stephanie, exactly? There's a motion to approve the 7 that we just voted on. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
And we are moving and seconding the vote of the 7 candidates that we just discussed for Region 17 delegates. They'll be serving a 2-year term. And so I'll take a roll call. Mrs. Lopez?
Aye.
Mrs. Lundin?
Aye.
Mr. Favela?
Aye.
Mrs. Levis? Aye. And I vote aye. Okay, now we'll be moving on to business services. And we have Mrs. Martin giving us a second interim report, I believe. Is that correct? Thank you.
Good evening, board members and cabinet colleagues and those that are participating virtually. Before I start my presentation, I just want to take a quick second to thank you all for your support, for your cards and flowers and plants. And my son's teacher even sent food to us, which my husband loved. But that aside, I really do appreciate everyone's support. This has been the most difficult time losing my mother to COVID. Something we weren't obviously prepared for, but knowing that my work family, as I refer to everybody, has been just, I've been overwhelmed. My family's been overwhelmed by the kindness and support. And so in addition to the great news I had to report about the second interim. I wanted to just take a minute to also say what a great district and group of people that have come to support and acknowledge and really reach out. And I really appreciated it. It really means a lot to me and to my family. So thank you. So now to the good news on the district's finances. Let me start with the budget timeline. I think you've seen this before, and I just wanted to get us up to date as to where we are with this. This is the second interim report. This will be all of our financial activity up through January 31st. So it's the last official formal report that we do for this year until we adopt the budget. But this is, like I said, a snapshot in time as of January 31st. So let's go ahead and go on to what is the second interim report. As I mentioned, school districts are required to report a minimum of 2 times about the status of their finances. The first one was as of October 31st, this one being as of January 31st. And districts are also required to certify, self-certify as positive, qualified, or negative. As you'll see throughout the report, FUESD has a positive certification, which means that we will be able to meet all of our financial obligations, in this current year and the 2 subsequent fiscal years. So this is the certification that we want, is a positive certification, and we have. I'll just go over briefly the changes that by kind of category, so we know the reasons why and understand. For revenues, LCFF, there were no changes from the first interim. Federal revenues, there was a significant increase since the first interim, primarily due to additional impact aid funds. If you recall, we budget $4.5 million to receive of impact aid funds. And as of January 31st, we had received $1.6 million beyond that 4.5. So I'll address that in a couple of minutes here about where that money is and what we're planning to do with that. The other state revenue, not a significant increase, but still something to be proud of. Mr. Leonard Rodriguez applied for a competitive grant right at the beginning of COVID last March. And our district was awarded, it's $24,846 a year. It's a 3-year grant, so it's about $75,000 for 6th through 8th grade kids. And it's on the tobacco use prevention education, big focus on vaping. And as Ms. Lieber talked about with cannabis and things. So he already has a plan to implement with the use of our counselors. It just worked out that there was that presentation tonight about the things that they do. So this is a really good piece of business that's in addition to any of the other money that we would put towards the program. Other local revenue, $200, these were donations that go usually from the PTA to our school sites. And in the category of transfers in, this was money that we had set aside, as you recall, for our settlement with CSEA, our classified employees. So we now moved that money from the reservation into the general fund where it will actually be spent. Next slide. Expenditure changes. We had an increase in certificated salaries, specifically for the teaching positions that we've added since first interim, so that we can reopen the schools and keep them open with lower class sizes. We did add a teacher at the virtual academy and 2 part-time intervention teachers. And these were all positions that were effective the beginning of this calendar year and were board approved back in December. The 2P grant that I mentioned, there's a little bit of funds set aside there for compensating the additional work that our counselors and teachers will be doing for this grant. Classified salaries, the biggest portion for the increase is the settlement that we reached with the CSEA union, the classified union. So again, it's the 3% one-time payment. We have an additional 1%, one-time payment for our non-benefited employees. And then in addition, there were 2 positions that the board had approved and that we added. So that's the total of the increase there. On employee benefits, it's really just the benefits that go along with those new positions and the one-time payments to CSEA. Next slide. Expenditure changes continue with the supplies and services. And really, you see a decrease in supplies, but I just want to kind of briefly explain, and hopefully in a way that makes sense. The supplies account is really used as a holding account when we know we're getting money, but we're not sure yet at how it's going to be spent or how the sites are going to spend it. So what you'll typically see is a larger dollar amount under supplies, and then it's allocated out to the sites and departments as they, submit their plans or how they're going to spend it. So in the end, it nets out that it's no real increase or decrease. No site, no department lost any money. As a matter of fact, they actually received money, but it shows there as a decrease. So I just wanted to be able to explain that to you. The services area, the increase, part of that is what I just mentioned. They might have moved it from their supply account to services. And we also had a little bit there for our TUPE grant. The transfers out. So I talked about the additional $1.6 million we received in impact aid. What we've done is taken that money because it was beyond what we budgeted. We budgeted to receive 4.5 million, and we've already received that. In addition, another 1.6 million. We've transferred it out to the Special Reserve Fund in the COVID-19 contingency. We don't know what's going to happen next year, the following year. It's really for planning purposes. It's unrestricted general fund money. There's no limitation on when it needs to be spent, but it's really what has helped us be able to mitigate, the COVID issues and be able to open up school this year. And it's what we'll need to rely on and continue to build as we go into next year. And more importantly, probably the year after that. And then there is also money that we had set aside for transportation for bus replacement. I'll get into that. There's a separate slide on that specifically. But this has kind of been a plan that's been in the works even prior to COVID. Buses are expensive. And so it's not something that you can just, usually most districts can't just buy all at one time. So I'll address that in another slide here. Next slide, our reserves. This is always something that's important. I did include a screenshot of the report so you could see that, and I did page number that report, 80 some pages, and hopefully, you could follow along and see on page 5 of that report that the district has almost $5.4 million in the general fund. It's 6.43%. So we're required to keep 3% reserve. And we have more than 2 times the required amount that's in our general fund. So you'll see that number, and it's called unassigned unappropriated amount is where it's sitting. Next slide. Special Reserve Fund. So this is the fund that is like, I would consider a savings account. This is where we put the additional funds like the impact aid money that I talked about. This is where we had, at first interim, we had the money sitting, you can see pending negotiations with CSEA, and there was a dollar amount there. We use this as a holding account, and we designate and reserve the specific use or the planned use for it. This is just because it has these reservations here, it can be changed. Again, it's through the work that we do to come up with what we feel like would be the most appropriate use of the funds to be able to keep schools open and to be able to do the things that we've done. But ultimately, these are subject to the approval of the board as far as the use of the funds go. So as you can see, we don't like to make any assumptions about how things would be used. And that's why it's just called COVID-19 contingency, because we don't know quite yet what we'll be using it specifically for, but want to be transparent and clear about where that money is and what it's sitting, where you can find it. This is in addition to that slide before that showed the more than 6% reserve. And this careful strategic planning that happens way in advance is what has allowed this district to be in the position that it is now with having schools open, and to the extent that we do have them open. I think I mentioned before at one of the prior presentations that we were actually setting aside funds in January of 2020, before the pandemic was a pandemic that we knew about. I remember at that time, $50,000, that's, what is this? And $50,000 ended up being a drop in the bucket. But the initial planning and the thoughtfulness and mindfulness that went into that, it was the beginning of, let's take everything, save what we can, because we know that we're going to need it. You know, the rainy day fund, well, let me tell you, it's been raining. However, we have rain jackets and umbrellas that we can endure, you know, exactly our own form of PPE there, that we can endure these challenging times and do so successfully. I wanted to mention declining enrollment and hold harmless, because this is something that this district will face, along with most districts in the state. We were a district of declining enrollment for about 10-year period up until 2018-19 when we started to grow. So we started to grow in 2018-19. We started to grow again in 2019-20, and then boom, here came the pandemic. However, the timing, I mean, it couldn't have worked out better for us financially, as far as we're a growing district and able to use the ADA, the average daily attendance, that was from that 2019-20 year. And so the hold harmless keeps us in a position that we can use that higher amount when we're still growing. We used it in 2019-20, and we used it in 2020-21, and we will be able to use it one more year in 2021-22.
Wonderful.
But what I put there for you is just, and these are estimates here. And let me also point out, this is ADA, not enrollment. I know there have been some questions about enrollment. Enrollment is how we have to staff, provide supplies, you know, for all of the kids there. The average daily attendance is the kiddos actually showing up at school or reporting virtually, or, you know, that kind of thing. We have about a 97% attendance rate, which is pretty good. But, you know, just so you know that if you see a difference in maybe some of the numbers that have been requested, this is on ADA. So you can see here that what happens, and this happened prior to COVID, it's been in law, that a district could use the higher of whatever this year's ADA is, or they could use last year's, if last year's was higher. So when we were declining, it was always to our advantage to use the prior years. We knew that was the minimum we were going to get. If we grew, it would only mean that we were able to add revenue, you know, to our budget. So I did this a little chart here to show you, so that it would hopefully better explain what I'm talking about when we get to 2022-23. You can see that we're able to use the 5,065 ADA for the years that I mentioned, but our actual ADA is somewhere closer to the 4,579 number. So in 22-23, not the next school year, but the following school year, there isn't that hold harmless provision any longer. So unless there's a change in law, what we would be looking at is a reduction of about 486, 500 ADA, depending on what the actual number is. Again, I just use this for calculation purposes to show what we're talking about. And so it's something that most districts in the state are declining. So most districts are going to come up against this same issue. And what I would say is that, one, we're aware of it, we're planning for it and finding ways, or trying to find ways to mitigate it. But this is also why the additional impact aid money we get, or those, you know, that contingency is going to be so important to help mitigate, so that we don't have this big drop, or that we actually will have the big drop, but that we will have funds there to be able to offset some of that. Nobody knows what's going to happen in 2022-23. These are projections, not forecasts. So I'm not trying to take and look into a crystal ball, but I'm taking the information that I know today and what our enrollment is now, and, you know, applying those projections out there to show that. So again, this is something that when you, in the future, when you hear or see deficit spending, because that's a big a word that, or a phrase that comes up a lot. However, I think I've mentioned probably every presentation that I've made, deficit spending isn't a bad thing as long as you know why you're deficit spending, and as long as it was with intention and it was planned. So we like to refer to it as a planned deficit. We know that we have this additional money now that we are not going to spend this year. We're going to spend it in a future year. But it will come up as deficit spending with the comments that the county puts in their letters, with the I shouldn't say little, but the met and not met on the criterion standards of the reports that go to the state. It's with intention. We know exactly how much money we have, and we identify how it's going to be used, and we don't count on one-time money to fund things that are ongoing. So I just want to point that out to you, because as we move forward into future year budget developments, you know, it's an issue. You'll probably hear about it at CSBA conferences or from some, you know, board members in other districts. It's going to be a big deal. A lot of districts don't have the additional impact aid money, or the, I won't get into their planning or finances, but I will say that this district has done a lot to try and mitigate those circumstances, knowing that they're coming up. So it's kind of bad news, but we're also in the best position that we probably could be in order to address that issue.
Should I ask you a question now, or do you want me to wait till the end of your presentation?
Let me just, I only have a few more slides and then we can come back if that's okay. Now, good news. I wanted to point out some other items that were included in this report. Our preschool, our child development fund. The district was awarded a grant. Dr. Curcio wrote a grant a while ago, IEEEP, there's 3 E's in there, Inclusive Early Education Expansion Program. And really what this is for is what do we need to do so that we could increase participation for specifically students with special needs in our preschool program. And the needs for our district really had to do with facilities and the parking lot at the Mike Choate Center. Or, you know, I mean, that's the basics. We didn't have the space, and our parking lot wasn't set up in a way to accommodate very many special education buses. So we were really limited then in how many programs we could offer or what we could do. We applied for this grant. We were awarded this grant. So we are getting a brand new classroom and also the parking lot improvements that will be necessary to be able to accommodate more vehicles, more people, more students. This is great news. This is great news in that not a lot of buildings going on in other districts. So it's something that we're really proud of, and will also benefit the community, you know, in total. If we can help more students in that early education portion, the better off we'll all be at not trying to play catch up or address things later on. So this is huge. This is great. One thing I will mention is that from the time that we applied for the grant till now, construction costs have increased. That's just the reality of it. So the grant money isn't quite enough to pay for what the entire costs are now. So a little over 67,000 is what we estimate that we will use from our developer fee fund, so not a general fund expense, in order to make that up. We did contact the state and ask, do you have any more money? And guess what that answer was. So that's why we're taking it from our developer fees. But I thought it was worth asking anyways. Then the next slide here is on our developer fees. So developer fees are assessed on new construction or additions even to homes if it's more than 500 square feet. It's at a rate of $2.72 per square foot. And it's to be utilized for growth in your district or for long-term master plans, facility plannings, assessment needs for what it could look like. And so with our preschool program and the enrollment just growing there, it's a completely appropriate and proper, and I say really good use of our funds. We take, and we're paying for about 10% of that total project, and the state's going to pay the other 90%, so that we will have more options and more availability for the preschool program in this district. Pupil Transportation Equipment Fund, I kind of made mention of this already. One thing I want to just start off with, because I know this year we have had to limit our transportation that we provide to just be our students with special needs, students with it in their IEP, Duluth students, and those students that have been displaced because of Mary Fay Pendleton construction. With the social distancing requirements that are still there for transportation, we don't anticipate being able to provide additional transportation as we did in past years. We anticipate that moving forward, at least for the next year, that transportation will continue on limited service basis as it has for this year. That said, we still need additional buses. Transporting our special ed kiddos is sometimes more challenging because they can't all be at a bus stop where we can pick them all up and take them all to a school. Some of them have very specific requirements and needs and programs that we're taking them to. And so it's something that even prior to the pandemic or us having to modify our transportation services, we were in need of additional buses. The good news is we have a way to pay for them. When the pandemic hit, one of the things that stopped was transporting kids. And we had significant savings, like in fuel costs, because we weren't putting, fuel in the buses to transport the kids. Transportation funding has a maintenance of effort requirement. We are still required to spend, and I think it goes back to 2012-13, but we still have to spend the same dollar amount on the program as we did. So using this carryover savings money, which is one time, and using it to buy new buses is a great use of one-time funds that we have there. Meets the requirement. And this part I think is great. The new buses are so much more fuel efficient, and the maintenance costs with tire replacements and things like that, it's just so much more reduced that we'll probably end up eventually seeing savings in those areas as well. There are buses that allow for 36 passengers, but with the high seat backs, we are able to, the social distancing aspect is addressed a little bit there because there's a barrier that's in place. So we actually, some of our 84 passenger buses, they don't have the taller seats, which means the kids have to be spread out more, and those are very expensive to operate. They get ridiculously not good gas mileage. And so anyways, being able to replace some of those older buses, I just see it as a win-win for everybody. Next slide. So summary, these are the three big takeaways from the second interim. One, we have a positive certification. Two, we have the 6.43% reserve, which is, twice what we're required. And three, we have 2.8 million, almost $2.9 million in a contingency to be used for future planning as we continue to open schools and address the needs due to the pandemic. And then finally, kind of the next steps. AB 86 was just signed into law by the governor on Friday. And that is for the in-person instruction grants and the expanded learning opportunities grant. For our district, you can see the estimated amounts, about $5.3 million. This money is not anywhere in the second interim report. So it's not been counted on, budgeted for, included on there. Part of the reason for that is because the second interim report is as of January 31st. And again, this was just signed into law last Friday. We were already looking at plans for a robust summer program or the learning loss mitigation or different things that we could do. So already starting on those plans, this is just great. They're going to give us money to do something we were already planning to do anyways. And as for the in-person instruction grant, I feel as if the state looked at what Fallbrook's doing because all of the items on the checklist that are required that other districts are struggling with to be able to open up, we're already doing. So I really, one of the first questions that I asked was, if we're already doing it, do we still get the money? Because this says, you know, that it's an incentive. Yes, you do. Yes. So that's good news because we're gonna get, these funds will come to us for things that we're already doing and that we had already paid for and that we don't have to add to. For districts that aren't open, you know, it may not be enough for them to do the things necessary in order to open. But for us, this you'll see as we go through the budget development process and through presentations about what the plan looks like for the summer school programs or the extended year programs, you'll get more details on that. But I just wanted to make note because I know that's been a hot topic at least in my arena lately. And so it's something that we are aware of and we'll have plans for, but it's not included in any of the dollars that you see here. So that's my presentation. Did you have a question?
I do. What is, the reduction is almost 500 students, is that correct? So
Yes,
that's the
yes.
equivalent of a school, since most of our schools are averaging 500 students, except for Potter possibly. So what does that equal in dollars?
A little over $5 million.
Okay.
It's about $10,802 estimated for 22-23 school year. Yeah, a little over $5 million.
And you don't feel that there's anything on the horizon that's going to mitigate that in legislation?
You know, there may be pressure because, as I mentioned, this is something that well, I shouldn't say all, most districts are facing with declining enrollment. So the pressure moving forward for something to be done to address it is definitely the pressure will be there. It's really going to be a matter of competing funds at the state level. And I can't make that prediction, but like I said, it's not just something unique to our district. So it will be something that will affect many districts. And so I see it as something that will definitely be parts of conversations. And I can't see that it wouldn't be addressed, but I can't make that prediction as to how it'll be addressed.
And what is the enrollment at our preschool?
I don't have that information specifically. I think it's 144 as I was looking at enrollment numbers, but I don't know that specifically. So I will get that information for you.
And the next, we're adding one classroom there with this new money, and that would accommodate about how many students?
I will get that information. I didn't write that grant, but I do know it does have to, like, it's not just a classroom, it's also a restroom. And, you know, for the needs for, there are different needs for our preschool kids.
It's just wonderful. it's just something to promote in the community. And so if we were, you know, there's a big push nationally for more early childhood and, you know, education. And if our district is providing those services and that we're going out there and seeking this funding, I think it's a feather in our cap that we should be able to address to the community. And
I
then,
will get more detail that we can provide on the, you know, in the weekly update, because the other part of that is that in the governor's proposal was additional funding for early education for, you know, the special ed kiddos, and that's proposed to be ongoing funding. So I mean, everything could just align perfectly, that we have this grant and we're able to do these things, and then the additional money to be able to do, to even enhance the program further. It's all things that we should be very proud of.
and then could we just we don't have to answer it now because it's probably something that you you know, in business, you wouldn't have the answer to, but I'd like to know what is going to happen to the parking structure, the parking lot. I mean, are we going to add more spaces, put cars closer together? Because once the community sees that ongoing, it would be nice for us to know what's ongoing. Or are we going to take out some of the grass area where the two happy faces are and add more parking? And just be nice to know.
You'll get the details. Those will have to be taken out at least temporarily, because that's where they bring the classroom in. I mean, we're talking about, you know, a modular building. So those will need to be removed at least temporarily. as for the parking lot, a lot of it is cutting away at the grass area to make it actually a bigger parking space and a designated bus loop so that the buses aren't competing with the parents. And we are also attempting to, or planning to, provide a little bit more, I don't know if the word security, but so that the little kiddos don't just run out into the parking lot as a safety concern or issue. So we're looking at, you know, everything that we can possibly do. If we've got that site under construction and the state's paying for most of it, what is it that we can do
At this-
that really
right.
fixes it all at once? And while it may be an inconvenience temporarily, it'll be well worth it for what we get out of it. But I'll make sure that we get the exact specific plans. We have pictures drawn up from the architect as, you know, showing the changes that'll be made there.
And then have we considered electric or hydrogen buses?
We have looked into those and we will continue to look at those. We have even pursued grants as far as that goes for those. At the time, the last time that we did look at them, they weren't something that would work well in our community, particularly because of the topography. And, you know, we have lots of hills and lots of curves and it just, at that time, now it's something that we definitely will look at. We do explore, and Mr. Bryson Bickler, our facilities director, he's in constant contact with San Diego Gas and Electric as far as grants and things that we can pursue for charging stations and, you know, vehicles that clean emission vehicles, things like that. But we definitely will look into the bus alternatives moving forward.
You know, I believe some of our city buses are so, and they're going through similar topography, so maybe the technology has improved.
Exactly. So we definitely will look at that.
And the summer school funding, when will we be getting, I believe this probably be to you, when will we be getting a presentation on our intent for summer school?
We actually have a team, a committee of people who are working on the summer school plan right now with the summer school leadership. So we should be ready by our April board meeting to give you a nice thorough presentation about what our plans are for the summer.
And I'm just curious, are we going for a full summer school program? Do we have any teasers you could give us right now where we're doing full remediation for learning loss for pretty much all of our students over the whole summer, like 6 weeks, I believe, a summer, or are we talking about 2-week increments?
Norby, do you want to give a little summary?
Certainly. Yes, Mrs. Lieber, we've been looking at all of those different options. There's a lot of different factors that go into planning for a summer school program. So one, we have certain programs that need to be offered. For example, extended school year, which is on your agenda tonight to vote on for our special education. So that needs sites. So that would eliminate those sites from being used for summer bridge is what we're calling our summer program. We also have a migrant summer program that we're required to offer. So that takes up a site, which means that site's out of commission during that time. And then we also have summer maintenance going on at each of our schools. So it's kind of a big puzzle. And then the biggest piece of the puzzle is staffing. We have the funds to offer many students summer intervention of some sort, but every one of those programs needs a teacher. And so we sent a survey out to our teachers to say, how many of you are willing, because you know they're pretty tired. How many of you are willing to give up 2, 3, or 4 of your weeks of the summer? We did have a very nice response. I believe that we're going to be able to offer a nice, robust 3-week program at Potter for our incoming 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and then 2 programs at in-town schools for our, depending on staffing, 2nd through 5th grade or first, you know, however many teachers we get, we'll offer it.
The length of those 2 second programs would be
3 weeks at this point in time is what we're looking at. And again, part of that was just the timing of when people come back to school, when those sites needed to be open. We looked at 2-week programs. We looked at 2 2-week programs. We looked at a 4-week program and we settled on a 3-week program.
How long is our summer break? Are we extending the school year at all or starting back early?
No, we are not.
Okay, so how long is the summer break?
We are out on the 4th, back in the first week in August. So the summer actually is a sequence of summer programs. So we have extended school year for children with special needs, which then is followed by the summer school for migrant education, which is followed by the summer bridge. And some of our teachers teach in all three. So some folks might teach maybe in our special ed summer school, then take a break and then come back and teach in the summer bridge. So the end-to-end week number of weeks, I don't know off the top of my head, the end-to-end number, but we'll make sure we have that in our report, in our presentation on summer school when we are back here in April.
So the last day of school is June 3rd. First day returning is August 16th.
Right.
Right, for kids, but our teachers are committed before August 16th and our principals are committed before August 16th. But
So how many weeks is that? I'm sorry, I'm not
11
looking at the
11
calendar.
weeks or so. About 11 weeks.
7 weeks. So my concern is that, we're coming off of a pandemic with some serious learning loss. And even though I totally commend our district for getting our kids back in school as quickly as they have, I would recommend possibly considering an incentive for more teachers to commit and a more robust program.
We actually talked about that very thing. How could we look at, we have a certain hourly rate that we pay folks for their work in the summer. We literally just talked about this very thing. What could we do with that to potentially maybe provide greater incentive that we would have more teachers available to do it? So we're exploring all of that because we so agree with you, Mrs. Lieber. We want to do everything we can. Here's the other thing about the research about summer school that I'd mentioned. There's a good amount of pretty solid research about a 3-week dose isn't necessarily the big cure everyone wants it to be as far as intervention. Now it helps certainly because we want to make up time. It's not to say that it doesn't, but its effect size on long-term academic growth is actually lower. So we will continue to do summer school because we want to make sure that we get kids, especially at the start of the school year, that we are getting kids ramped up. At some of our schools, we also are going to be looking to have teachers potentially working with the children who are going to be in their class, which is a beautiful thing because then they're already like a warm engine, right? When our kids are back in school. So there's some of that planning going on. What's going to be really important, obviously, summer school, of course, but it's going to be what we do when we get back to the school year and the enhanced intervention that we have actually during the 6.5-hour day, that we get kids in school a full day, that we have enhanced intervention programs that are happening with them, that we're supporting our teachers with continued professional development in refining and working on their literacy instruction. So those are all things that we will be talking with you in the coming weeks and months as we look to our budget development. How are we going to align the resources that Cindy was talking about to what our plans are for next school year, obviously in addition to doing summer school. But what are really the key strategies that we really want to have in place when we start the new school year? So it's a mix of all of those things all together, but we'll have a nice summer school outline and plan for you when we get to our April meeting.
Are there restrictions on the 3.6 million as how it's to be spent?
There are restrictions and requirements. Some of them are still being, flushed out right now as far as the interpretation. Sometimes what happens is we have legislators with great intentions and give us this money, and then they may not necessarily be the practitioners or the people that need to implement these things. So there's often a cleanup language or some clarification. The restrictions at this point or limitations are things that you're doing to open up your schools, keep them open, whether it's the PPE, additional teachers, reduced class sizes, the things that we're already doing. It's pretty flexible is how we can do it. And I have made mention in the past, one of my favorite phrases is maximizing our revenues. So again, one of the things that we'll be working on and looking at is, because as I mentioned, we're already doing a lot of the things that they're giving incentives for districts to do. But one of the things that we'll be looking at is possibly using these funds to pay for things that we are doing. And what that does is free up our own general fund monies that we had committed to it to begin with, and allows all of the flexibility that we can have because we'll be spending this in the way it needs to be spent. But then we were already doing these things and committed to these things and paying for these things. So it's really a way of, as I say, maximizing our revenues, giving the district the most flexibility with our dollar amounts. Sometimes districts don't do that. They would look and say, what else are we going to do with $3.6 million? And that's okay. That's their philosophy and their method of doing things. I think that it's in the district's best interest to provide the greatest flexibility for how we spend these, our funds. And we do that by, like I said, maximizing our revenue, really looking and saying, well, we're doing these things, these are allowed, this is what we were going to do. And hey, we might look like, mind readers that we knew these things ahead of time. We're not, but what we are good at is planning, is knowing what needs to be done, regardless of whether the state's going to pay for it or not. And if they do pay for it, then we're going to look at how can we do this in compliance and really make the best use of these funds and free up our general fund money that we had committed to it, so that we have those left to do, use those funds for things that the district, that the board feels are best for our district, not the one size fits all kind of funds that come from the state with strings attached to them.
Thank you.
We will spend the money as required, but we will also work at freeing up and giving the most flexibility to our other funds.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight.
I have one question, if I might. Well, it's more of a pitch. For our summer bridge program, one of the things that I've enjoyed hearing about from the staff is the importance of kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade for reading. And I would think that if there's any way we can make sure we target those kids and maybe even focus some of that learning loss specifically on helping to get them back up.
Absolutely.
In terms of reading, so that they're better equipped.
Absolutely.
When the year starts.
That's right, Mrs. Lundin. In fact, it's the reason why those were the first kids we brought back.
Yeah.
Right, when we, in our plans. So it's absolutely, you're spot on with
Okay.
that. You bet. You bet.
And how many buses did we get?
Depending on which buses we're looking at, they're about anywhere from 85,000 to 120,000. So we're looking at potentially for, depending on the combination of them. One of the other great advantages is, believe it or not, it often costs the school district to surplus a bus. Because we have to pay for the transfer of the title and all of the emission things. And so they often sometimes sit even after they've been surplus. With the state bid and the companies that won the state bid, they will actually take our vehicles in trade and give us credit. It may not be a lot, but it's better than paying somebody to take it. And give us a credit for the buses that we have. And so that helps. That's great. Getting rid of them and also getting a little bit money back or towards the purchase of the buses. So 4-ish, if we can squeeze out, we're going to squeeze out as many as we can with this money, but we're looking at about 4 buses.
Perfect. Good job.
Okay, any more questions? Otherwise, we'll move on to action resolution 14, 2021.
Mrs. Lieber, we need to approve the
I'm sorry.
second interim report. We just had
We
this
need-
great
we need a-
conversation.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
It is an action item, so we need a motion to approve the second interim report.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And we'll take any more comments. And then Mrs. Lopez.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundin.
Aye.
Mr. Favela.
Aye.
Mrs. Libas.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you. So now we'll move on to to another action item, resolution 14, 2021, to establish an associate student body, ASB Special Revenue Fund. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
And any comments or concerns? Okay, do we want to take the roll call? Mrs. Lopez?
Aye.
Mrs. Rivas? No, Mrs. Lundin?
That's okay. We've got a lot of L's on the board. I vote aye.
Mr. Favela?
Aye.
I think it's this one too. And Mrs. Libas? Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Favela is
Don't
helping
forget your
me.
vote.
And I vote aye, thank you. Is that the right one?
resolution. 1620.
This one was 1420.
And also, if you'd like to, we can sign at the very end if you'd like
Okay.
to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
No
action
problem.
resolution 15/2021 to designate authorized representative to the San Diego County School Fringe Benefit Consortium. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
And any conversation or discussion? Thank you very much, Mrs. Martin, for.
Did you have a choice?
I
was just curious.
Still, thank you very much. And we'll now take a vote. Mrs. Lopez.
I vote aye.
And Mrs. Rivas.
Lundin.
Lundin.
That's okay. It's a long meeting. It's all right. Aye.
Mr. Favela.
Aye.
And Mrs. Rivas.
Aye.
And I vote aye. And then action resolution 16/2021 to designate authorized representative to the Santa Ana County Risk Management Joint Power of Authority. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
And any conversation? Thank you very much.
Another fun one.
I do have a question. I hope Mr. Proctor is doing well.
I think he is doing well. He still remains out on leave, but I think he is doing well. Thank you for asking.
So will you like to take a vote? Mrs. Lopez.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundin, I got it right. Mr. Favela.
Aye.
And Mrs. Rivas.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you for helping me with those, Mr. Favela. And now we'll go on to another action item for new temporary certified 1.0 FTE teacher position. Do I have a motion
I'll make a motion.
and a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Oh, no, you got it. Favela.
And any discussion?
I just think it's excellent that we can continue to keep our class sizes small and make it safe for everyone.
Yes.
You bet.
And we'll now take a vote. Mrs. Lopez.
Aye.
And I'm gonna get your name wrong again.
That's okay. Aye.
Mr. Favela.
Aye.
Mrs. Libas.
Aye.
And I vote aye. And information only, this is a first read for new job description for network systems analysts. Thank you for the information about the salary.
You bet.
I would like to have a motion.
It's informational.
No.
No, information only.
Information.
Any conversation or discussion?
We'll bring it back to, if there's any feedback afterwards, we'll bring it back for a second reading at our next meeting.
Okay, and now educational services. We have an action item for 4-day extended school year. Do you have a motion
I'll make a motion to
and a
approve.
second?
Second.
And any discussion? And so we'll take a vote. Mrs. Lopez.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundin.
Aye.
Mr. Favela.
Aye.
And Mrs. Libas.
Aye.
And I vote aye. And now we move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? And a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And do we have any discussion? I have one question. Have we ever considered offering or participating in the California Healthy Kids Survey for teachers and parents?
You want to talk about that? It has a teacher component.
It has a teacher component. Last year, we sent out a survey to our parents and our students regarding from FUESD, who does this California Healthy Kids Survey. And then now this year, we have our panorama survey that we've been using with our, getting ready to send out to our teachers as well. And then we created a survey last year to our teachers, just asking them what resources they needed as we moved forward into distance learning and what materials they might need and what committees they might think they needed. So we just now have just decided to go with Panorama for our, we've just been so happy with their services and what they can provide for us and the surveys that they have. The main reason that we have the California Healthy Kids Survey for our kids is that it's really nationally, well, statewide recognized, and that we can compare the data from year to year to year and we have that data and a lot of our LCAP goals. The county likes that particular metric.
Got it.
Do we have access to the results of some of those surveys?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
You bet. Yep. So were you asking to see the results of the survey?
Yeah, I don't know if that
Summary
needs to be an official, or I just ask for it personally,
Yeah, you
or
know, here's what.
I'd
with
be
the-
interested to know,
Yeah.
you know.
Some of,
where
we
we
just
stand on that.
finished giving, you know, a round of the panorama survey to families. And so I can include that in a weekly update for you. You bet, happy to. Yeah, and the data is really great. And the surveys, it's just really good data to look at. And we've been digging into it with our schools and our principals and teachers. I think you remember our school counselor from Live Oak that's what she was referring to,
Okay.
is that particular survey. So you know how you can, some of these surveys, you can get lost in all the data, but we'll create like a summary report for you.
That'd be
And
perfect.
you bet, happy to.
What we like about Panorama as opposed to the California Healthy Kids Survey is that there's something, they have a service then of what you can do with the data.
Yes.
So California Healthy Kids Survey gives you the data, but Panorama then has a whole source of resources for you, a bank of resources. If your kids are having trouble with grit, you might want to try these 12 things with them. So it's a much better resource for us.
Okay. Good.
Okay, we are gonna now take a vote on the consent agenda, but before we do, I know everybody's gonna close their computers and walk away at the end of this. So before we do, I want to ask any of you, as I would like to have this as a continued formality, that if you would like to add anything to our next agenda, this would be a time that you could give suggestions for additional items to be placed on a future agenda. We'll do it at the end of consent, but I just wanted to give you a warning so that you could think. And if there was anything, I'd like to add this to our regular board meetings, so you could give ideas for future board meetings. Okay, so we'll now take a vote on consent. Mrs. Lopez. Mrs. Libas? No, Mundine?
Aye.
Mr. Favela?
Aye.
Mrs. Libas? And I vote aye. And then are there any items that you would like to add to a future agenda before we close the meeting? Yes.
I had one. At a previous meeting, we had a first read on our school visitation policy. And I would like to see if we could schedule the second read for our April board meeting on revising our school visit policy for board members. It's a
Okay.
protocol.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. Do I need to make notes of this or? Okay, thank you. Is there any other items that you would like to add? Okay,
Well, is this the only place that we would have an opportunity? It'll become a regular pattern for
I
us to
just would like
do
to
it.
add it.
Okay.
Yes, I've
But if
been,
we come up with something at a later point, we could
send us an email.
let you know.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so I believe now we are going to adjourn our meeting at, I believe, 7:05. Thank you very much.
8:05.
8:05. All right, 8:05.
Thank you.